Okay. I don't want that there. Okay. I don't want to hear myself. Okay. Hi, everyone. Happy November. Oh my goodness. We are moving this month. I can't believe it. Um, it felt like so far away, and now it's like here really soon. So that's what's kind of I feel like changing the calendar really switched me over into like we got to do it mode. Like here we go. It's happening. I hope everyone has a really great or had a really great Halloween. If you participate in that, we had a great time. I'm exhausted, so I will be taking care of myself the rest of this week and not being super hard on myself or planning a lot because man, I am tired after yesterday. It was a lot of fun and it was also hard. So, if you did celebrate, I hope you had a good time. And a couple of things well, first, if you're here, say hi, leave me an emoji, leave me a comment, just say hello. I love to hear that you're here. If you watch the replay, do the same thing. I just love to know who is around. And I know some of you also just send me a DM and let me know that you heard and what your kind of favorite parts were. And I really just love that and I appreciate it. So, however you want to say hello, please do so. I have so many fun things. Hi, Colleen. It's so good to see you here live with me. Thank you. I have so many fun things coming up over the next like month or two. I am really going to like start it off here in the Facebook group and then kind of slowly roll it out. So I just really want to thank you all for being here and for participating. And if there is anything that you want from me, now is the time because I am a creating fool because I'm trying to do a bunch of stuff before I move. So that being said, let's jump into today. What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about really what my secret weapon is to eliminate defensiveness, but this could also really go to almost any defense mechanisms and have better arguments because let's be honest, like we don't get to see our spouses that much and we don't want to spend them arguing. Right now I'm literally over email, so I don't want to like have an email that's full arguing or multiple emails that's full arguing, right? It isn't helpful. And so we just want them to be quick. We want them to be productive. We want them to solve the problems that we need to solve. And we want to kind of get around any of the barriers that prevent us from doing that. And let's talk about what those barriers are. So, when we think about defense mechanisms, and defensiveness is a defense mechanism, gaslighting is a defense mechanism, avoiding is a defense mechanism, right? There are so many different things, blaming others. Like there are just a lot of things. But the reason that we have defense mechanisms is because our brain and our body perceives some sort of attack, I guess, and it is trying to make ourselves feel better. It's trying to protect us, to keep us safe. So they're really helpful because we want to be safe. I want to be safe. The problem is when you're trying to work through things like with your spouse, but you can also put this with anyone that you might have conflict with. So with your kids, with your family, with anyone else, if you're in this kind of I need to protect myself mode, I'm not really now able to look at it from anyone else's side. I'm not able to see any other perspective. It's really hard for me to kind of get in somebody else's shoes. And it's really hard to have a compromise, right? It's really hard to like veer off of what I need to happen because it really becomes, I need this to be safe, right? And it isn't just I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be right. Any of those things that our brain perceives as damaging to us. And, I can tell you, for me as a perfectionist and a recovering maybe perfectionist, because I really work to not be, this was a really hard thing, right? If I did something to hurt somebody, it went against like all of my beliefs of myself. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to make them sad. I don't want to, right? But by me like defending myself and my actions, I'm actually like making it worse, and I'm really not getting anything accomplished. So the idea behind defense mechanisms, again, is they are there to keep us safe. And so if they are coming up for us, it means that we are threatened in some way that is being triggered to keep us safe. And if our spouse is also doing any of these things, it means that they are being triggered in a way that their brain is saying, I need to keep you safe. And again, all of those ways, I can eventually do like a bigger list maybe on this, but I feel like the most common is defensiveness, a form of gaslighting, and or avoiding it altogether. And so let's talk about like some of those. So defensiveness, my spouse is like the king of defensiveness. But I also will say that in the military, and you all might have heard me say this before, in the military, they are trained to be defensive. They are trained to defend every single little decision that they make, all the way down from what wording they use in an email, because what they're doing ends up being sometimes life or death. So there is this need to really defend the decisions that you're making, regardless of the outcome that those have, right? And so the problem is now they are in an environment, and they're in that environment a lot. And in that environment, they are constantly defending this, that, and the other thing. But at home, defensiveness really makes it hard to have a conversation. So what happens then, right, is I'm saying, like, I really just want to talk to you more. And then they go into this, well, I'm doing the best I can, and I don't have a lot of time, and blah blah blah, right? And so now I'm not having a productive conversation, and if anything, I feel worse because nothing is being solved, and it doesn't feel like you care about what I'm doing. Another example that I'll give with my spouse is he ends up doing a lot of like, because he doesn't mean to hurt my feelings, but he'll hurt my feelings. And what he'll do when I tell him that he hurts my feelings, or at least what he has done in the past, is he will like justify why he did whatever actions that ended up hurting my feelings or saying or whatever, right? And I'm like, you're basically defending hurting my feelings. Like and that really is what's happening. And he's not trying to do that, but really, again, he's feeling guilty or something is going on. And he's feeling that he has to defend that action. When really, we all know that if he just were to say something like, gosh, I'm sorry that hurt your feelings, we would be in a much different place and the conversation would move forward, right? So this is what I mean about those defense mechanisms. So they're there for a really good reason, and they can really have the opposite effect when it comes to having productive conversations during arguments. Gaslighting is another one of those same things. I don't want things to be my fault, so I start to, like say things, and now the person is saying like, wait, did I what, and all of that. So avoiding, you're not even having the conversations. It's like I'm sweeping it under the rug. I'm feeling like it doesn't even happen, and ultimately we're not getting anywhere. So here is my secret weapon to managing really any sort of defense mechanism, because to me, the way I look at defense mechanisms now is that he, if I'm right, my spouse is in some way feeling threatened, not necessarily physically threatened, but you know what I mean? Like his, how he thinks and how he acts and how it's being threatened. And in some ways it is, because whatever it is probably hurt my feelings, right? The best way that I find to get around these defense mechanisms so that you can have a productive conversation is to take responsibility for your heart. All right, let's talk about this. In every single interaction, even when you're just really hurt, you have some percentage of that. And it's really hard, I think, when we're in the middle of it. So, like, I'm thinking of a time when I got mad at my spouse because he like said he was going to be home at 11. Now it's like 11:30, 12, 12:30. He's still not home. And he comes home eventually and I am upset, right? Like, it felt disrespectful that you didn't come when you said you were going to come. And in my head in that moment, because I'm upset, I'm feeling disrespected, it's easy to be like, it's just your actions. You were the one that chose to come home late, and you're the one then that needs to like make this right? At least that's where my brain tends to want to go in these sort of situations. But the reality is I play a role in this too. So did I express to him the importance of coming home at a certain time? Did I let him know that it really gives me anxiety when he says he's going to be home and then he's not? Did I respond to my feelings of him being late in a way that allows for productive conversation, or did I just lay in, right? There is some part of this that I can take responsibility for. And maybe it's only like 1% of what happened, but here's the thing. And they actually teach us this when you are becoming a psychologist, is that the best thing you can do to diffuse an argument and get around defensiveness is like take away I'm trying to think of what the word that I'm trying to use is. You take away some big element of that. So I'm right. So this situation, he comes home late, I'm really mad. And now I'm saying like, you're disrespecting me. Like, that wasn't a good thing to do. He comes back and says, whatever his defense of that is, like, I was having a good time, or, work went late. I wasn't able to use my phone, or, whatever, my phone died, whatever the rationale is. And now I'm coming back with, well, this happens a lot. And so now we're going and we're doing this. And what I am saying fuels his defensiveness, and then his defensiveness fuels my defensiveness. And now, right, we're just going like this. Yeah. So by me taking responsibility here and saying like, you know what? I probably could have been a little bit more clear about, the reason why I at minimum needed you to communicate if you were going to be late. Now you sort of take away that fuel that's keeping the next thing going, because I take this away and now, right, it just sort of, it's like if it's a burning fire and you take away the gasoline, or you take away some oxygen element or whatever element of fire, and eventually the fire just goes out. And think about this. If you're yelling at somebody and they're just sitting calmly and saying, I understand, that must have been really hard, that must have been really, like, it is really hard to keep up that, at some point you're going to be like, thanks. Like, at some point all of that energy runs out. And this is when you get to the area where you're having a productive conversation, not when you're trying to do or talk or whatever the person. But now I can get into why I was hurt, what I need from you, and what I can do about that. Right. So it could also be like me even just taking responsibility. Like, maybe I have no role in the fact, like, he knows that I didn't want him, I need him to be on time. He knows that I need to communicate with me. He knows all of those things. It still didn't happen. Maybe it can just be this, like, I didn't I came on, I said some things that I shouldn't have said. Maybe it's, just something that you can accept responsibility for. And now again, it just takes out that defensiveness. And they're also then, now they can start to think about, okay, what did I do? So in a weird way, it will get them to actually think about the things that you want them to think about, that's making them kind of go like this to begin with. So there are several different ways that you can accept or take like this kind of responsibility. So let's talk about what they are. Number one, you can apologize. And I actually, next Monday, I have an entire episode about apologies coming out on the podcast. So I highly recommend tuning into that episode on Monday, because this is such a great way to do it. And I talk about like what needs to be part of the apology. I talk about all the different kinds of apologies that there actually are and why that makes a difference. But think about it. If I say to you something along the lines of, maybe I didn't communicate clearly, and I'm sorry for that. And I think that, one thing I'm going to do different moving forward is like XYZ, right? How do you like come back and be defensive against that? Like, you can't. It's almost impossible. And if you keep sticking to that kind of conversation and that productive area, they have no choice. And the same goes like if for them too. If they were to kind of stop, like, you eventually will run out of steam as well. So saying you're sorry or some version of an apology is the best way to start this, or one of the best ways to kind of get around and accept responsibility. Maybe again, saying something like, I think maybe I wasn't clear enough and I'm sorry, and that might be something different, or I really lost my temper there, or just what I just said was really passive aggressive. I'm sorry for that. I'll change that right now. Right? Like just something in terms of taking that responsibility, because that's what apology is. An apology is you accepting responsibility for something and then making amends for it. So that is a good way to do that. Again, check in with that podcast episode next week. The next part of this is you're accepting responsibility without making excuses. So you're not saying like, I'm sorry, I was, really passive aggressive right there, but I'm just so mad because you do this all the time. And right. So I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm accepting responsibility, but I'm still doing it in a way that like that defensiveness is going to stay up. So a lot of times I say, accept responsibility for your part and then stop. And really what that looks like, is exactly, I was passive aggressive there. That wasn't the best way to do it. And I didn't like my actions. Stop. Period. End of paragraph. And then see what happens. Don't make excuses for it. We always want to do this. That is also a defense mechanism. And just stop. And then the next one is listen. Listen more than you are talking. Because even if it's me who is upset, who is wanting my feelings to be addressed, even in those situations, I need to be listening to what is going on. I need to be knowing like what defense mechanism is coming up. I need to be knowing what I need to know in order to have the productive conversation. And I cannot do that if I am the one doing all the talking, because I do not know where they're coming from, if they're meeting me halfway, if we're even having a conversation at all. So say what you need to say, stop, and then listen, and really listen to understand, where, again, like, where are they coming from? What were their thoughts about it? How are they feeling? because all of that also will go into what happens next. Like, what do we need to do next? Is there, okay, this defensiveness is coming because they feel really guilty about it. This defensiveness is coming because they really don't feel like they've done anything wrong. This defensiveness is coming because, whatever. But you get my point. And the only way that I'm going to know that is if I stop and listen and really see exactly what that is and what is going on. And lastly, when you're accepting responsibility for your part, you have to mean it. You have to mean it. And I say this with apology too. You can't just be like, well, sorry. And I'm not actually sorry. It has to be something that you genuinely mean. This part is so important, because think about that. When somebody has said sorry to you in the past and then it doesn't change or it doesn't feel real, right? Like, it doesn't help anything. And those defense mechanisms are still going to stay up because it just doesn't, it's not having the desired effect. So you can take responsibility, but you have to mean it. You can't just pick something that you don't believe. I can't say, I know you were late and I guess I could have said something better. Right? Like, I'm saying the words, but it just doesn't, it's not believable. It's not going to give you the desired effect. So really think about, in this situation, and you know what I like about this too, is because I have to think about what's going on. To identify my piece, I have to think about what my piece is. Your brain is going to their piece. What is your spouse's piece? What is it that they are doing? And so to really identify yours, to take responsibility, you have to think about it. And these moments give you those moments that you need to really not say things that you'll regret. You still might, but it gives you those extra, right? You're not just responding, because in order for me to come at you first, I need to think about, what's my part in this? What could I have done different? How can I, right? Like, I'm having some of these conversations with myself before I'm even saying them out loud. And it just kind of helps take some of the, if it's like a balloon, it takes some of the air out of the balloon. So I'm not quite so, at my max. And it just helps me to get into the mindset that I need to have a productive conversation. So again, if you want to get around defensiveness, or really any defense mechanism that keeps you from having productive conversations, productive arguments, accept your part in it. And again, maybe it's just your 1%, maybe it's 50%, maybe you had 75%, right? Like, it doesn't matter, but accepting what your part in it is, what can you do differently moving forward, and then really clearly say it. An apology is a great way to do this. Make sure you're doing it with meaning what you say. Make sure you are not giving extra excuses, and make sure you are really listening more than you are talking. And I find that this, more than anything else, helps you have those conversations that you need to have, so that your emotions are addressed, so that whatever needs to be solved gets solved, so that it doesn't end up being hours long arguments or days or weeks or months, right? Like, it just ends up being a conversation. And guess what? If it works, you're more likely to bring up things that bother you sooner, knowing that I can get around defensiveness. That was the thing that was happening with my marriage initially, was he was so defensive. So then I wasn't bringing anything up, and then I would eventually explode and he would be more defensive, right? And we weren't kind of getting anywhere. And so now I know how to get around his defensiveness. I expect it. We actually joke about it a lot because he knows that he does it too. And he calls it his kind of toxic trait. Well, maybe I called it that first, and now he calls it his toxic trait, right? But now I know how to get around it. And now I know we can get to having that productive conversation. I know it's going to be It's going to work. We're going to figure it out, and then we get to move on, right? So I'm so much more likely to bring things up because we know how to do this. Let me know what questions come up for you here. Let me know if you have a hard time with this. Let me know if you're doing it and it still doesn't feel like it works, because again, anytime you change dynamics, sometimes it can take a little bit of time. That's why most of my packages have at least 3 weeks of Boxer app support, so that you can, kind of troubleshoot that stuff while you're making those changes. And I think that's it. Let me know. Let me know if you want support to do that. Come to the group and say, hey, I'm having this issue. And here's the thing. I know it's weird to talk about like marriage and weird stuff that's going on, but if more of us did it, the less weird we would feel it when we were having these kinds of issues, right? So come to me, come to the group, however you feel comfortable. And I can't wait to hear what that does to change your arguments. As always, if you have any topics you want me to cover, let me know. And I just am so appreciative of all of you. And I'm so appreciative that we are doing this weird military life thing together. So I hope you have a great week. I hope you really take care of yourself, and we will see you back next week. Bye.